Two people, same age 30, same salary, $85,000, same savings, $40,000 in the bank. One buys a home, one keeps renting and invests the difference. I ran the actual numbers in 10 different cities, and the winner changes depending on your zip code, and it's almost never the city you'd guess. By the end of this video, you'll know the real break-even point for buying versus renting in 10 major US cities, why the rent is throwing money away. Line is mostly a myth. Which 3 cities make buying the obvious financial winner right now? And which cities make buying one of the worst money moves you could make, even if you can easily afford the mortgage? Quick note before we dive in, this channel runs the actual math, not the vibes. Like this video if you're team buy, subscribe if you're team rent and invest, and drop a comment telling me which city you live in. I want to see how the math lines up with your real life. I read every single one. Here's the tool real estate economists actually use to answer this question, the price-to-rent ratio. Take the median home price in a city, divide it by the median annual rent for a comparable place. Roughly speaking, a ratio under 15 favors buying. Between 16 and 20 is a toss-up. Above 21, renting is usually the stronger financial move, sometimes by a landslide. Let's meet our two people. Call them Sam and Jordan. Both 30, both earning $85,000, both starting with $40,000 saved. Sam buys. Jordan rents an equivalent place and invests every dollar of the gap, the difference between Sam's total monthly ownership cost and Jordan's rent, into a simple, low-cost index fund. Let's start in San Francisco, where the price-to-rent ratio sits around 36. Sam buys a median home here for roughly $1.7 million. Jordan rents the equivalent for about $3,950 a month. In year one, Sam feels like a genius home ownership, an address that impresses people, a mortgage interest deduction. Jordan feels behind, throwing away almost $50,000 a year in rent. By year 5, the math tells a different story. Sam's monthly cost, mortgage, property tax, insurance, maintenance, runs several $1,000s above what Jordan pays in rent. That gap, invested by Jordan at a historical stock market average, starts compounding hard. By year 15, we're around the break-even horizon. Economists cite for San Jose tier markets, and San Francisco isn't far off. Below that, Jordan is very likely ahead. Sam is still building equity, but a huge share of the early payments went to interest, not principal, and price appreciation has to do a lot of heavy lifting to catch up. By year 30, Sam owns the home outright. That's real, and it's not nothing. But when you calculate what Jordan's invested difference grew into over 3 decades of compounding, in a ratio, 3-6 city, renting and investing frequently comes out ahead in raw net worth, even after Sam's home has appreciated significantly. This is what I'd call the mirage of the mortgage statement. Every payment feels like progress, because you can see the balance go down, but nobody shows you the opportunity cost sitting quietly in an index fund. Jordan never touched. Now let's jump to Austin, Texas, the most extreme case on this list. Recent data on Austin found the median monthly cost of buying a starter home runs over 120% higher than renting an equivalent one, the largest gap of any major US metro right now. Austin also has far more sellers than buyers at the moment, which tells you prices haven't fully caught down to where rents already are. Sam's mortgage here isn't just expensive, it's more than double Jordan's rent for a comparable unit. That's an enormous invisible gap for Jordan to invest every single month. 10 years in, Jordan's portfolio has had a decade of contributions, this large compounding. Sam has equity, but has also absorbed years of a market correction because prices ran up faster than incomes ever could support. Next, New York City, where the ratio runs somewhere between 16 and 23, depending on the borough. This one's genuinely close. Citywide, the ratio sits closer to 16, a real toss-up zone. Isolate Manhattan alone, though, and it jumps into the low 20s, tilting harder toward renting. Let's steelman the buyer's case here for a second. Rent control doesn't exist for market rate units. Rents in this city climb fast and unpredictably, and owning locks in your housing cost for good. That's a legitimate argument in outer boroughs with lower ratios. Buying can genuinely make sense for someone planning to stay 10+ years. In Seattle, the ratio sits around 26, a similar story to San Francisco, just slightly less extreme. Break-even estimates here land in the 10 to 12-year range. Anyone planning to move within a decade is taking on real risk buying here. Anyone planning to stay 20-plus years has a much stronger case. Denver sits in the high teens to low 20s, a murky in-between zone. This is where the decision stops being about pure math and starts being about your personal situation. Job stability, how long you'll stay, whether you actually want to deal with a leaking roof. Now we cross into buy favorable territory. Atlanta's ratio sits around 15.6. Researchers flag this as a market showing signs of future price stability, specifically because the ratio sits so close to that 15 threshold. Sam's monthly ownership cost here is close to, or even below, what Jordan pays in rent for a similar unit. Tampa comes in at around 14.5, just under that 15 mark, meaning ownership costs run close to parity, with rent sometimes lower. This is one of the rare cities where throwing away money on rent actually holds some water. The gap Jordan would be investing is small enough that Sam's forced savings account, their equity, can catch up. Then there's Pittsburgh, the headline number of this whole video. Analysts have found the monthly cost of owning here already sits below or near equivalent rent, meaning Sam is often cash flow positive from close to day one, with a break-even point on total cost that arrives in under 2 years. Cleveland is one of the most buy-favorable markets in the entire country. It consistently shows up at the very bottom of price-to-rent rankings nationally. Buying here can run 40 to 60% cheaper than renting an equivalent home month to month. If Sam bought in Cleveland instead of San Francisco, the entire story of this video flips. Sam is very likely to out-earn Jordan, and by a wide margin, because there's barely any gap left for Jordan to invest in the first place. And finally, Detroit, which rounds out our list at the buy-favorable extreme. Combined with Cleveland and Pittsburgh, these Rust Belt markets represent a small slice. Researchers found fewer than 100 out of over 800 US. Cities analyzed where buying currently beats renting on pure monthly cash flow. Everywhere else, at least in the short to medium term, renting wins on that specific metric. If this is already showing you the part of the rent vs buy debate most people never run the actual numbers on, go ahead and hit like it takes 1 second and helps more people see their own city's real math instead of a generic rule of thumb. Now here's when the opposite of everything I just said is actually true. Price-to-rent ratio only measures monthly cash flow. It says nothing about your specific mortgage rate, your down payment size, how long you'll actually stay, or your local property tax rate, all of which can swing the math by years. A big study of national data has found that over long enough time horizons, think 1 to 2 decades, homeowners on average build significantly higher net worth than renters, largely because owning forces disciplined savings through the mortgage payment itself. Jordan's whole advantage in this video depends on Jordan actually investing the difference every single month without fail for decades. Most people who plan to do that don't. That's not a knock on anyone, it's just behavioral reality, and it's the single biggest flaw in the rent and invest the difference argument in real life. If you're planning to stay in a home for 10 plus years, if you have a stable income, and if you're disciplined enough to genuinely invest the difference if you do rent, the math gets a lot closer than the ratio alone suggests in almost every city on this list. So here's what I'd actually do with this information. First, calculate your own city's price-to-rent ratio. Before you assume either answer, it takes 5 minutes, and it will probably surprise you. Second, if you budget for the real total cost of ownership, maintenance, property tax, insurance, not just the mortgage payment, which is the number that fools almost everyone. And third, if you rent, automate the investment of the difference, because the entire renter's advantage in this video evaporates the moment that money just sits in a checking account instead. The honest answer to should I rent or buy was never one answer. It was always 10 different answers depending on where you live, and the ratio tells you which question you're actually answering. Like this video if the Pittsburgh number surprised you, subscribe if you want more of these city-by-city breakdowns, and comment your city so I can tell you which side of this you're on. But what if Sam had put that same $40,000 down payment into the market instead of a house at all in every one of these 10 cities? That's a different video, and in a couple of these markets, the numbers might surprise you even more than this one did.